Good morning, Robert.
Morning.
I'd like to start the interview with, if you would, give us a little background of biographical data, where and when you were born, and about your family and what you did before you entered the Navy in 1942.
I was born in Strasburg, Ohio. And grew up there, went to school there. I was raised by my grandparents and lost my grandfather when I was sophomore in high school. And then when I got out of high school, I went to work. It was during the Depression, and I got a job that I've never forgiven my uncle for helping me get. I was working in a roofing crew.
That's all right, just go on.
Slinging a tar mop for 25 cents an hour. And couldn't afford to go to college. And I puttered around and worked some as an electrician with my brother-in-law and with my mother's husband. And finally went to civilian pilot training and then joined the Navy in June of 1942. And I went to elimination base at Olathe, Kansas for primary training, and we flew Yellowbirds, Stearmans. I had one incident there, probably the reason I got my wings. I was on a solo flight and I was practicing wingovers, excuse me. And as I was pulling through, I heard a big bang, and everything got quiet. And I immediately throttled back, and my propeller had broken off. So I made an emergency landing, and everything turned out okay, and got back to the base, and I was a hero in the barracks. Final squadron at Waldron Field, and was trained. That was where they trained torpedo bomber pilots, and I got my wings in 20th of October of '43, and I was hoping to get them before my birthday, but I didn't quite make it. I wanted to be a 21-year-old aviator, but I wasn't. Then I got temporary duty to New York City to ferry an airplane from the factory out to the West Coast. And I was a country boy. I had never been to the big city before. And by the way, when I got my wings at Corpus Christi and on the way to Fort Lauderdale, all the guys, we were allowed, I think, $300 to buy uniforms. And we all spent our uniform allowance in New York City on, not uniforms, but we had a pretty good time. Anyhow, I got to New York City, and we were there for about 2 weeks. There weren't any airplanes available to fly. So then I went to the West Coast. We weren't allowed to fly by ourselves, and I was I met Wesley W. Whitfield. I'll never forget him. He was a lieutenant in the Naval Reserve. He had been with the Royal Canadian Air Force and had been to England, and he was shot down once himself, and he shot down one English airplane and 2 Germans. And as far as Whit was concerned, the war was over. And we flew from New York to San Diego, and we spent 8 days doing it. Whit was quite a guy. It was a trip I'll never forget. I made my first night carrier landing on the old Saratoga, CB3, I believe, and on a big, nice moonlight night, and I thought, heck, this is pretty good stuff. It's pretty easy, and I found out I was a little bit wrong on that. But anyhow, we flew aboard the Enterprise Christmas, the day before Christmas, on 1944, 24th, and joined the fleet. Found out how big the Pacific Ocean was. It took us 7 days to get to the Philippines and join the rest of the fleet. Then we got caught in Halsey's typhoon. Which was scary. We were in the typhoon for 3 or 4 days, and the fleet lost several destroyers. The waves were so high that they were taking water down the stacks. And on the Enterprise, we were taking green water over the bow. And we had lost a lot of airplanes that tore loose from tie downs and everything, but we all survived. And then we were sent on some searches again. We were looking for the remains of the Jap fleet. We went to Iwo, and we went to the landings in Okinawa, and made it on the first strikes in Japan, and we lost quite a few people starting out. I was fortunate and made it, but several of the people were killed by our own troops. Saratoga was bombed, and she had people out, and our skipper, our second skipper, I'm sorry, led a search and bad weather, and he broke out of some clouds and was over the U.S. fleet with his wingman, and somebody got trigger happy and shot both of them down. And he was lost, and so was his crew. And prior to that, the first skipper we had was lost on a strike on Formosa. War is hell. It's a waste of time, and it's bad business. But I survived. Japanese plane came in undetected one morning and dropped a 500-pound bomb on our flight deck. And it was a dud. It was a dud. The Enterprise was a lucky ship. Somebody was taking care of it, but it was a dud, and they rolled it off the deck, and during that same day, excuse me, our forward gun mount was hit by one of our own ships. They were using proximity fuses, and they were tracking an airplane that was attacking our ship. And they got close enough so the proximity fuse went off and destroyed one of our gun mounts and killed, I think, 10 or 12 people. But so we went down to Ulithi, which was a fleet anchorage at the time, and were repaired by the two, they had two repair ships down there, the Ajax and the Jason, and they patched us up and we went back out. On May, I think the 14th, we were kamikaze, and I'm extremely lucky. My stateroom was right beside the #1 elevator, about 20 feet away from it. The Jap rolled over and hit the #1 elevator. I was in my room. I was in bed at the time. It was about 6 o'clock in the morning. And the elevator was blown up about 400 feet in the air, and that was the end of our cruise. Unrepairable. And we only lost, I think, a total of about 20 people during that attack. The Enterprise was just a lucky ship. She was blessed, and Tokyo Rose reported us sunk every other week, and we lived through it. And then we went back to Ulithi and offloaded ammunition and stores and everything, and went back to Pearl, and then went to Seattle, Washington, where the ship went into dry dock and was repaired, and did get out before the war was over, but by then we broke up the squadron, and maybe July of '45, and the war was winding down, and so they decided not to form this air group, so they sent me to Corpus Christi as a flight instructor, and that's where I was when the war was ended.